Hello and welcome back to another episode of Clash of Cinema. We are here to talk about another exciting, controversial movie that you either have or haven't seen. And with me, I'm Kyle Lentz. With me, as always, is Nabil. Welcome, welcome.
How do you guys?
All right. So this one's going to be a real doozy that we're
Is it?
talking about today. We're going back since this week is the release of the brand new Mario Brothers movie, Super Mario Galaxy, the movie. We decided to go back to 1993 and revisit the original Super Mario Brothers movie.
Hmm.
So this was kind of a it's been a while since I've watched this, so it was an interesting revisit to say the least.
Hmm. And it is our second Bob Hoskins movie in a row.
Yeah, yeah,
Coincidentally, not by any intention.
yeah. Oddly enough, yeah, we are hitting a couple Bob Hoskin movies here, which is great because I mean,
Mhm.
who doesn't love a good Bob Hoskins?
Right.
So, all right, so this is your first viewing of this, am I correct?
As far as I know, if I ever saw it, I don't remember it.
Okay. So now,
Um, it it definitely screams 90s. I mean,
oh, for sure.
it I mean, like the vibe, the music, the the Italian brothers from Brooklyn. I mean, not that that's different than the actual lore, although I'm not
Mhm.
sure. Did they ever specify like in any of the games that where they're from, or they're just
I don't think they ever
two
said they were
brothers?
from Brooklyn. I think that
Yeah.
just became a thing. You
Hmm.
know where I think it, and I could be wrong about this, but
Hmm.
because this isn't the first time they were done as live action.
Oh, really?
There was a TV series from 1989 to about 90 that ran in syndication weekday afternoons, and it was just the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. Starred Captain Lou Albano from the WWE. He played Mario. I can't remember the guy
Is
who
that
played Luigi.
was that was live action though? That wasn't a cartoon?
It was both. It was both.
Oh, okay.
So there would be live action segments where they'd come out and they'd do some silly sketches, and they did it in front of a
Hmm.
live audience of kids and such. And they'd
Hmm.
have special guests on, like Cyndi Lauper would come on. You'd have Inspector
Hmm.
Gadget, somebody dressed as Inspector Gadget, things like that would come on. And then they had then they'd go into a cartoon, which was about
Hmm.
the Mario Brothers, which these two guys, I believe, voiced both of them as well as played the live
Hmm.
action. So that ran for a seat, it's like 65 episodes. And that was I think that's where they established the fact that they were from Brooklyn. I'm not,
Okay.
don't quote me on that, but I think that might have been where that came from.
I
Uh,
mean, at the very least, it was a choice because I mean, by the time we get into the movie, it I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it they don't stay in Brooklyn, so it's not
no,
like you could have almost picked anywhere, that was like a
oh,
city
certainly,
setting.
certainly, without a
Yeah.
doubt, yeah. Because I mean, really, yeah, the setting of where they came from really wasn't relevant to
Mm-mm.
the story or how everything even played out. Even with the climax when they're in, they return to Brooklyn, it wasn't really
Hmm.
anything that would have mattered if they were somewhere else. They could have been in,
Right.
Oakland or Los
Throw
Angeles.
throw throw a dart on a map and insert name.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But so it's I mean when you go into a Mario movie, you have certain expectations because at this time when this movie came out, Mario was huge. You
Hmm.
had, the three Mario standard Mario games and any,
Hmm.
spin-off games that had come out at that point for because we're up to Super Nintendo games at this point. So like the Lost Islands or whatever they had were
Ooh, Dr. Mario.
yeah, Dr. Mario, like a lot of those. So Mario was huge. This was not
Hmm.
like this was
Hmm.
not something that was kind of under the radar type of thing. This was a big deal when they
Right.
announced they were going to be making a live action Mario Brothers movie. And
Yeah, I
I
wonder
it,
if the comics had come out by then, because I know those there was those Valiant Nintendo comics that I mean
yeah,
there weren't many, but that was probably right around the same time.
probably it was probably like yeah, early 90s ish because yeah, I remember those comics. I never bought them,
They're
but I
va
do remember seeing
they're
them.
valuable. I mean,
Yeah,
when I see them pass through the store every couple of years and 50, $100, for like one of them, you
and
know,
they flip pretty quick probably too. Somebody's like, yeah, I'll take them.
those Nintendo ones they just didn't do a lot of them. I don't know
Right.
why.
Well, Valiant was a smaller subsidiary there. They didn't really have.
Hmm.
the audience that a lot of ones. I think this was probably their attempt to
It
really expand.
it seems like a missed opportunity in
Yeah.
general by them though. Like they just assume like they're gonna make more money with the games. Why bother doing ancillary side stuff when I would say
Yeah.
why not?
And that's what I always kind of thought that was strange that,
Hmm.
they had, sure, they had the Saturday morning cartoon, they had the weekday cartoon, they had because those,
Hmm.
the Mario cartoon ran for a few seasons. They just
Hmm.
dropped the live action stuff after the first.
Hmm.
And yeah, there was never comic books. There weren't really many toys or any other ways in which you could really connect outside of the games. It was really
Right.
games were the main drive of this character.
Yeah. And I mean
So
that's fine. I mean, but like we get like with some of the other media properties, like where they expand as wide and far as they can,
mhm,
for the sake of commercialization. I mean, you had Batman, Michael Keaton, so then they did Batman the cartoon, the
yeah,
toy, the Monopoly version, the cereal,
right,
like so
everything.
I don't
I
know. I
mean,
mean,
you're
like,
capitalizing on this character, this brand
hmm
that, I mean, it just really kind of keeps feeding the machine because
hmm
then you're going to get more property, you're going to get more movies, you're going to
sure.
get more shows. And that's really
It
the
just
idea.
seems odd that they didn't, especially the way you said that, this is a time when Mario was big. Why not
Yeah,
strike while the iron is
absolutely.
hot? But Nintendo has always sort of marched to the beat of their own drum. Like,
Yeah,
there's definitely like Pokemon, like, they make money on exactly what they want to make money on, and
right,
they,
right.
don't distill it much.
You're right, you're 100%. But I mean,
Hmm.
now it's funny because now you go down the toy aisle at Target or Walmart, there's Mario toys, there's, all of that stuff is
Hmm.
pretty readily available. They've got the stuff for the movie, they got the stuff for the game, they've got everything. They're
Hmm.
merchandising like crazy, t-shirts, everything
Hmm.
is everywhere now.
Oh yeah.
They're not really comics though. They still haven't really nailed down the
I don't.
comic side of things.
It must not seem cost effective or cost you know doesn't must not make sense to them to like hire somebody to write it, draw it, do all that, and then whatever the profit margin for them is versus like, hey, make a 3D mold of this action figure and then run it a million
Right.
times.
Yeah, and just change
So,
the colors of the outfit
hmm
or whatever. But I think the big thing too with that is audience. The kids are really the target for Mario at this point, and kids aren't really buying comics like the adults do as much. So unless
hmm
their parents are buying them, like me, you buy them for your
hmm
kids to do that, and
hmm
that's their main connection. So yeah, I get that, I guess. So
hmm
anyway, well, returning back to the movie. So the
So,
movie. This was released, what was it? Hollywood Pictures, I believe, was the studio,
yeah.
which was a subsidiary of Disney. So
hmm
Disney was, and if, again, not without researching this up, I'm pretty sure this was the first video game to live action movie that had been produced. I don't believe there was
hmm
anything before this that was really ever done. Um,
hmm
jumping from one to the other. So it was a big deal. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember the rumblings of this, early on, 93, you're hearing this, or you pick up whatever,
Nintendo Power.
yeah, Nintendo Power Magazine, or you pick up like a Comic Scene or some of those different magazines,
Hmm
Premiere, whatever magazines were out at the time, Entertainment Weekly, and you'd go through and be like, oh yeah, look at all this stuff. Everybody's talking
hmm
about this movie that's coming out.
hmm
And, it was the cast is nothing to sneeze at. You've got Bob Hoskins, as we mentioned, playing Mario. You've got John Leguizamo playing Luigi. You got, again, Dennis Hopper, who we had on Waterworld, back playing another villain here. Um,
hmm
so it was a pretty star-studded cast just in the mains that they got. So that
hmm
was that's a big get. So here, they're really pushing this thing to be huge. So
hmm
the the two people tasked with making this film were Annabelle Jankel and Rocky Morton. So they co-directed and wrote this thing. And yeah, you're probably like, who are these guys? They're mostly video directors.
Okay.
So they did a lot of
Like
music videos.
music video?
Yes, like
Okay.
music videos from the 80s. Their first feature film was for Touchstone, again, another subsidiary of
Another
Disney,
Disney.
for a movie called DOA, which starred Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, I believe. So that was
Okay,
around
I'm
1988.
vaguely aware of its existence.
Yeah, it came out in 88. It was a modest success. Like it was a movie
Hmm
that did well enough to, put these guys
Enough
on
that
the
these
map.
people got work out of it, like
Yep.
further.
Yep. So, Disney's like, hey, let's give these guys an opportunity to make this film.
Hmm
So this is this is what we got. We got a very cyberpunk, um, like kind of semi quasi futuristic-y, like also apocalyptically bizarre world that existed in a mirror dimension or parallel dimension to ours,
Hmm. Hmm.
where dinosaurs had evolved into
They were
quasi,
like anthropomorphic.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you had like a kind of a weird mix because you had those that looked human and then
Hmm.
those that looked like dinosaurs. You had the
Yeah.
Goombas, as they were, with the tiny heads and
Yeah.
um, things like that. So it was kind of odd. But even before all that, the movie
Hmm.
starts with the hatching of a baby.
Hmm.
So she's left on the doorstep of an orphanage of where nuns find her, and which is, you see this a lot in movies, very
Sure.
very trope way to start things. But this girl hatches from an egg, and we find out years later that she is Daisy, right? She is
Hmm.
she works at, or she's at NYU. I believe she was a student there
Hmm.
doing, I think she's a paleontology student, if I'm not mistaken, because they were looking for dinosaur bones.
Little on the nose.
Right, exactly. 100%. So, so yeah, so that's how we meet her. And she's
Hmm.
through her interactions where she's trying to do some digging and finding dinosaur bones. She's losing her funding. She has to find a new way to get funding. So in her haste, she bumps into Luigi and Mario, and there's a little spark between her and Luigi, and um, they meet, they go on a date, and then she's abducted, right? So the story's going to go right through. We're gonna boost up. So apparently, there's been missing Brooklyn girls. They've been missing. No one knows what happened to them. Nobody, there's no clues. There's no indication. Turns out, they're being abducted by these dinosaurs from this.
To bring back to their dimension.
Correct. Yeah, because they
Yeah.
need to find the princess, right? Whichever one it is, and they don't know who she is, so they're just taking girls and trying to figure out
Mm.
which one's the real one. So when they abduct Daisy, and it's funny, you have the two characters there, Spike and I can't remember the other name offhand, but there's those two guys that are, they're kind of like a weird like thug, but not.
They're like henchmen, for lack of a
Yes.
better term.
Fisher Stevens is playing one of them. He's been in a lot of stuff. Short Circuit, a lot of different movies through the years.
Hmm.
But and the other guy is funny. I don't know his name offhand, but he was in Howard the Duck. That's how I remember him.
Oh
He
my
was in
God.
the Yeah. If you watch it, he was in the bar when Howard beats up the girl's manager and takes the money.
These controversial movies, they're just it's like Kevin Bacon. They're all connected.
There's a link between every one of them. That's when
Oh,
I was
wait a minute
watching
too.
that,
Wait.
I laughed.
If we're getting conspiratorial, these were that Howard and this were both Disney.
That
Mm,
Well, yeah, technically, yeah. You think about
mm.
that, it's kind of like, okay, we got like yeah.
Funny interjection for you, really quick too. So initially, I think you offered to let me borrow a copy of this, and I was just like, ah, no, I'll find it. This was actually very hard to find. It is
Yes,
scrubbed. It is not
it is.
offered on any streaming
No,
service.
it is
So
nearly impossible. You got to like buy it on DVD.
I did, in fact. But I just was like, why? Why is this not readily available?
I really honestly think it's one of those movies that the studio just wants to bury and be like, let's forget
I
it
mean, they could
ever
get some
existed.
kind of revenue on this thing as the new one is coming out,
Sure,
and they're
that's
just
it.
like,
Why not?
nope, nope.
There's always
Hmm.
there are fans of this movie out there, just like
Yeah.
Howard the Duck, just like Water.
Hmm.
There is a fan of this movie, and the I think you would find it like, even if a kid kind of stumbled on this because like, oh, a Mario movie, and they watch it, I think they'd be kind of glued to this because they'd be like,
Hmm.
what is this I'm watching? What is it kind of,
Yeah, yeah. It definitely gives you like, head turning vibes. Like, huh?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But without, without anything or any context, if you were to watch this movie just as it was, I think that it still has some kind of appeal, that there's an audience that would kind of, you know, that would latch on. There'd be a
there's a
cult classic.
chemistry between Hoskins and
A
Leguizamo that
hundred
works.
percent. 100%. And I think that's what makes me enjoy the movie more than, I should,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
liked watching the two of them together. They work
Hmm.
well. Even
Hmm.
though, they're brothers. And you
hmm
look at him, you're like, really?
hmm
For some reason it works.
I also think that it would have been a nice nod, and I don't know if like just again it's like a general appeal to not want to remember this movie if they had included those two in these new ones, like
yes,
two older versions or this or that,
yeah,
and it would have just
yeah,
been a fun nod for people that have either seen this or appreciate that it existed.
yeah, or even yeah, or so, yeah, in some way, had him in there. I know
Like
since
they don't
Bob
have to be
Hoskins
Mario and
passed,
Luigi; they could just be like two old Koopas or something, and you're just like,
yeah,
oh, ha ha ha.
yeah. At least I know Bob Hoskins passed away a few years back, but at least Leguizamo, you
hmm
could have them both in there and somebody doing a Hoskins-esque voice.
I think Hoskins was still alive for the first one, but I could
I
be
think he
wrong.
was, yeah. So
Yeah.
it would have been nice to have a little bit of a nod in there for him to
hmm
see him in there. It would have been cool. But
Yeah.
now, and the thing is too, I mean, thinking back to, original Mario games and things like that. So there's a specific idea of what you think the world would look like when they go there. And when you watch the new Mario movies, they nail it. It is
hmm
exactly what you would expect. This movie is a
hmm
lot different. So you go into the world, you cross through that dimension, but it's very similar to what happens in the animated movie. They're fixing they're stopping a pipe from bursting or something, and then they cross over through there into this dimension.
Pipes.
Yeah, so the pipes are still, a method of going back and forth, but once you get there, it's kind of strange because it's like this city, and again, that cyberpunk look to it kind of got like that really weird apocalyptic type of feel to it, like you see in a Mad Max movie or
You know what it almost kind of reminded me of? I
yeah,
mean, yeah, it gave me the apocalypse vibes. It also kind of reminded me of the alternate 1985 in Back to the
yes,
Future 2.
okay, yeah, yeah, 100%.
Mm.
Because yeah, it's still
Yeah.
got a lot of neon, a lot of that kind of weird
Like, hey,
vibe
what
with
are you
it.
doing here,
Mhm.
butthead?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. But I
hmm
think at that point too, like right around this time, that there was a lot of cyberpunk movies.
hmm
Because you had like Johnny Mnemonic, you had movies like I don't know, there was a bunch of them that came out at that time. And and a lot of them were low budget ones like Cyborg, or these weird things that were coming out at that time. Um, so they weren't like inventing a new genre or trying to do something different. It
No,
was really
they're
kind of
they're just
fitting
trying
into it.
to sort of add what we already are expecting
Yeah.
from the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this time, yeah, this is kind of like what you'd expect. But I think it threw people for a loop because it wasn't what you were hoping to see in a Mario world. But back in those days, I mean, the CGI technology was just at its infancy. This was the
I
same year
w
Jurassic Park
there
was.
I don't think there would have been any way to do it the way like the new ones are depicted a lot like you would see in the
Yeah.
video game. They look exactly like the games
Yeah.
kind of. It just they gave us the best that they could with what we had at the time.
I agree. Yeah, I think so. Because I mean, again, it's really hard. I mean, you can't really do, Mario jumping on these big
hmm
mushrooms and hitting
hmm
his head in the block. I think it would look really honky tonk back in those days. It wouldn't have that
Yeah.
that
Um
smooth vibe that we'd have now.
yeah.
I like
So
that.
we before I derailed us, so we were kidnapping the girls, bringing them into Brooklyn, and then Mario and Luigi sort of take an interest.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, and we've got all that. Yeah, yeah. So I think one of the things too that we're looking at with with some of that, with when they get into the world, you start to learn that they do add mushrooms in here. So there's a whole trust the fungus tagline that they were using a
Yeah.
lot, where, you learn about different, ways in which the mushrooms could communicate, which leads to learning about the princess's father, who
hmm
was, kind of turned into like whatever that goopy stuff you saw around the
The goop.
kind of caking the city and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, but and and I think they added a lot of the same characters, and or at least used names of references to characters from the game. Obviously, Mario Luigi, Princess Daisy. Daisy's a character that's
hmm
from those games. You had Koopa. He's technically supposed to be like what Bowser was, but I think they just called him King Koopa, which it was his original reference name, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think at that point he'd been known as Bowser.
hmm
By this time. And then you had the Goombas, but Goombas were mushrooms, I believe, like those little walking mushrooms.
The Goombas were like the mushroom-shaped little
Yeah.
brown guys with like
Yes.
sharp teeth.
Yes. So, but they went and they were like they're just going to be these dinosaurs with these tiny heads, um,
hmm
which was interesting. But there's some themes in there that I thought were really interesting that I don't think I picked up on the first time I ever watched it, but this time I like it was the idea of once people gained intelligence, they became wise to Koopa's, how bad he was or what he was doing that was wrong. Because
Hmm.
like Spike and the other henchmen there, when they became intelligent, it took them a little while, but then they finally were like, "We're
Hey,
on,
wait a minute.
yeah, we're not on your side anymore. We're on, Princess Daisy's side and such." But I
Right.
thought that was an interesting theme that was
Hmm.
really subtle in the movie. Because you look at like the Goombas, you look at some of the other characters, are all really dopey and you know
Hmm.
easy for him to manipulate and control. So that's how Cooper was kind of keeping his power there. And
Hmm.
I thought that was a fascinating little anecdote in there that they added.
Right.
Some of the things, though, I would say now, okay, here, like, so you had, trying to think what else. There was, as they traveled through, you got to see different parts of that dimension. There's the city. They had that really large set where they had, the interior sort of thing. You had the exterior where they're in the desert, and they're kind of making their way through there, and then they get back to the city. So there's ways in which you saw how that world kind of operated, which was
Hmm.
kind of neat. I thought that was a really interesting world building process that they did with that um, at the time. Um, but going into some of the controversy of
I was
this,
about to ask controversies. What do we got?
oh, many, many, many. Bob Hoskins was kind of when he took the role. I mean, it was a paycheck role, 100%.
Hmm.
He knew it was going to be garbage, and he's been quoted by this in many interviews where he's like, "I knew it was going to be terrible." So did Leguizamo. We knew it was going to be bad. So they would a lot of times would just take a few shots before a scene. They'd go in there pretty tipsy and they make the best of what they did. But I actually saw Leguizamo live, and he did talk about it. He was like, "Yeah, this is, we got drunk. We would get a little tipsy each time we'd go in for a take, and we did it."
Maybe that's part of the reason behind like this. No, nobody wanting to promote this film. Like they don't want to like say, hey, it's okay to be like keyed up while acting, unless that's
Right.
what the role calls for. Which I
Yeah.
can't imagine like anybody would actually be able to say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That might have been a huge, huge factor in that. Another thing too is and Hoskins has come out many times and said he did not he clashed a lot with the directors.
Hmm.
He thought they were very unprofessional. He thought they were terrible. He was not happy with any of that. So I think that probably led to some of that, just being like, screw it,
Hmm.
I'm gonna get drunk. I'm gonna have a good time on set,
Hmm.
whether or not I like where I'm at. So there was a
Hmm.
lot of animosity on set. And I'm pretty sure once the dailies started coming out and the execs at the studio started seeing them, they're like, this is not what we were hoping to see in this movie. And I
Hmm.
think that's when if I could be wrong, and I think the movie was initially slated for a summer release that year. And again, this is the year that Jurassic Park hit, and it was a juggernaut movie. But so it got pushed to the fall. I think it was like one of those October dumps, like just put it out then.
Get it out.
Yeah, just get it out. We'll put it out. We'll see what it does. Obviously, didn't really do much business. It kind of faded into obscurity for a while. It found a little life on VHS, but I think that was about the most you're gonna get from it. And it did get released on DVD, but this was like early DVD years. It's not even in widescreen. It was really just like that.
It was it cost me $12 on Amazon. So
Yeah, yeah,
then
and
that
it's
was like a week ago. So
yeah,
take from that what you will.
right. Yeah, it's not like it hasn't become like a jewel collector's item type of thing. It's really just this here. If you're interested here, it exists out there. Um, but yeah, there was a lot. I know when the movie was being assembled, it was a fairly lengthy cut, close to 3 hours, if I'm not mistaken, or at least two and a half or so, that was assembled in the studios. Like, we're trimming this thing down. They cut it down to about 140 or an hour, 45 minutes. Um, that always was sort of this debate online, and you hear these like the Justice League, the Zack Snyder Justice League cut, this.
Hmm.
They're like, let's see, where's this, where is this extended cut of that? It exists. It does exist. It is a real thing. And it is out there. Umbrella Entertainment out of Australia put it out on DVD, Blu-ray, about a year ago or so.
Mm.
And and they remastered it in HD and they put it out. So you can find it. You can purchase it from there. And I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon there too. But I have not watched this one. I've only watched the theatrical cut at this point. But it is something that I do want to see, just to see
Hmm.
where the vision actually sort of
Hmm.
shifted. What changed as they were,
Yeah.
assembling the story and things together.
Yeah, like what was taken away that they didn't feel needed to be there?
Right.
Did we have more girl abductions? Did we have like a bigger, lengthier, like look into Koopa, like
Right. Was there more
be all of the above?
with the king,
Hmm.
who finally turns human, and you see, oh, that's Lance Henriksen. You're like, oh, cool. But that's that was it. It's like there, maybe there's more there towards the end of, and as and they leave the movie open for more story because at the very end you see like Daisy return because she had
Mm.
decided to stay. She returns, she's like, I need your help, and that's where it ends, and you're like, okay, there you have like this
And the
clean.
studios looked at that and said, the hell with this."
Yeah. If I'm sure if the returns were favorable, they would have been like, okay, do another one. But
Yeah,
they were not at all. I can't even tell you how much the movie made. I'll look it up here and see what it did, but I'm pretty sure it was, it did not make back its budget. But
really.
yeah, I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure it sank pretty hard. Okay.
Oof.
Oh no. Okay. So let me rephrase. It did get a summer release. It was May 28th of 93. So it came out before Jurassic Park. It tried to jump the gun. The budget was 48 million. Opening weekend was 8.5 million.
Oof.
The gross worldwide after it finished was 20.9 million. So it
That's bad.
didn't even make half of its money back. So it
Took a bath
really
on that.
It really, yeah, yeah. So yeah, they should, get another sequel from that one. Yeah, that's a tough, bitter pill to swallow for.
That's crazy. So like even in, like Japan, which probably would have eaten that up because it was from a Japanese company, like was like nope, pass.
And they love, American movies a lot of the time. And especially Disney, they really, they'll embrace that stuff. So you might think, oh, here's something. I wonder if
Yeah.
this had been more successful, if it had been. Um, would we have seen like a tie-in at Disney World? Would there have been the rides like now you have it at Universal, but would it have made it into Disney because of the success of that? Um,
Mm. Hard to say. I wonder what
yeah,
I mean, at some point there must have been a tipping point that Mario got more successful again to warrant this treatment. Like, I mean, what did the new one must have come out in like 23,
yeah,
24.
23
So you
years.
figure almost 30 years apart.
Yeah. So just some interesting trivia from here. So Dennis Hopper did the movie because his at the time his son was 6. He said, Dad, I think you're probably a pretty good actor, but why'd you play that terrible guy, King Koopa, in Super Mario Brothers? And he said, well, Henry, I did that so you could have shoes. And he says, Dad, I don't need shoes that badly. That's what his 6-year-old son told him
That's
after
that's great.
he had done
Kids
it.
say the darndest things, 1993.
Yeah, yeah, they do. So quote from Bob Hoskins. This is from a 2011 interview with The Guardian. He said, it was a fucking nightmare. The whole experience was a nightmare. It had a husband and wife team, Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel,
Oh,
directing.
okay. That actually explains a little bit. So they were a couple.
Yes. And then whose arrogance had been mistaken for talent after so many weeks, their own agents told them to get off the set. Fucking nightmare, fucking idiots. That is exact quote from
Bob
Bob
Hoskins.
Hoskins. So yeah,
I
not
love it.
not happy with that. But he
Yeah.
also did not know it was based on a video game. He didn't know he was making that when he signed
Well,
on.
yeah, like you said, it was a paycheck role for him, so I'm sure he
Yeah,
wasn't like scouting the movie. He was just like,
right,
oh yeah, sure, I could be
right.
the
And
hefty Italian plumber.
yeah, it wasn't until his son asked him what he was working on, and he says he's doing a movie about this Mario Brothers movie, and he goes, his son was like, "Oh, it's a game," and that's how he learned about it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, in the John Leguizamo's biography, he does state that he and Bob Hoskins hated working on the film and would frequently get drunk to make it through the experience. And both men apparently knew the movie would turn out bad, so they simply tried to make the best of it. So he also stated that one of the biggest reasons the movie turned out the way it did was because the directors wanted a more adult movie, while the studio considered the source material was looking for a children's film. So there was that disconnect between. But
I
I don't
mean,
know. They would have read the
I,
script and been like, "This seems really adult."
yeah. Uh, all I'm gonna say is John Leguizamo's a lot like Danny DeVito. I mean, like Danny
Yeah.
DeVito's been in some kids movies, but like
Yeah.
you don't you don't go hunting Danny DeVito for kids movies in the same
Right.
way that I wouldn't go hunting John Leguizamo for kids movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just not. There are much better when you kind of don't shackle them with like, hey, you
Yeah.
can't swear, you can't act like this or that.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yep.
to hire John Leguizamo and expect him to be like Charlie Day, who
Right.
also in in his defense is also pretty raunchy.
Yes.
I wouldn't expect him to be able to play that kind of Luigi in the same way that like when I heard Charlie Day for Luigi, I was like, what?
Yeah. Right.
How? And he made it work.
Yeah, he did.
So
He did.
yep.
Here's a quote from Dennis Hopper
Yeah.
on the film's production. It was a nightmare. So it's a theme.
Hmm.
Very honestly, that movie, it was a husband and wife directing team who were both control freaks and wouldn't talk before they made decisions. Anyway, I
Hmm.
was supposed to go down there for 5 weeks and I was there for 17. It was so over budget.
I
So
would explain 48 million with 21 as a return.
yeah, so yeah, they probably doubled their budget easily. And if they hadn't, they might have been a little better in the end, saying, okay, we made the money back. So yeah, it was probably a lot of the reshoots, a lot of the, you know,
Could have gone for some commercial advertising, slipped in some Domino's or something.
yeah.
Hey,
But
how about this mushroom pizza from Domino's?
right, yeah. But Bob Hoskins' son, Jack Hoskins, is a fan of the movie. He does, and
Well,
he still praises his dad's performance to this day. So
he might be biased.
yeah. Oh, well, yeah. And he says, if there, this is a quote from him on an archive he wrote, a fan archive. He says, if there's anyone reading this, please understand that it's no one's intention to ruin the classics. One last thing, if you remember your past enjoyments, then it would definitely keep your childhood memories alive and safely locked in your head forever.
Mm,
So, in a way to defend
yeah.
the downside of the movie.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. So some early drafts of the movie
Hmm.
were supposed to have the King Koopa character
Hmm.
only disguise himself as human. So he was
Hmm.
supposed to reveal himself as dinosaur-like, and then as that. And you kind of saw that with some of the like there was like ripples on their faces and things like that. So they kind of alluded to that, but you never got to
Hmm.
see much of that with the fact
Hmm.
that they were like that. They were supposed to have Luigi was supposed to get raccoon powers at one point, but that didn't happen. But they did, I kind of dug what they did with the boots. You know how they explained how they could do high jumps and things like that. So they had these power boots that they would,
Yeah.
put on and shoot themselves up. I thought that was a clever.
That
A,
was it was a good way to get some of the stuff from the game in without
yeah,
like having to go crazy with CGI or anything.
yeah. So at one scene, John Leguizamo accidentally broke one of Bob Hoskins' fingers during a
Oh,
stunt, which would involve the Mario van. And according to Leguizamo, when it happened, Hoskins started cussing profusely and incoherently, but instantly forgave him. So there wasn't any, bad blood between them for that.
that's
Um,
good.
let's see. Let me see if there's any other things. But after the film bombed at the box office, Nintendo stopped producing live action theatrical films based on their video game franchises for a time. And there was a Metroid film that was put into development but never went past pre-production. And Nintendo would finally do a live action movie with Pokemon Detective Pikachu. That was like their first return, and that was 2019. So
Yeah,
there was a long window before they're like, okay. And
that
that
was
was successful. That was
well,
critically
yeah,
and commercially successful. Um,
yeah.
so the cast and crew came out saying they disliked both Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel for their allegedly obnoxious and controlling behaviors, their regular rewrites of the script, and for making major changes to the film without telling each other or members of the production. So they were each doing their own thing while they were making this movie. So understandably, that's going to elevate your budget and piss
Right, and on
off
top of it,
your,
it's gonna create animosity with your
yeah.
cast when it's just like Luigi like says the line one way, and then the other director's on screen. He's like, "What are you doing?" And he's just like, "That's what she told me to do." Well,
So
I didn't know about that.
yeah, right. So here's
Yeah,
something. So the film crew would regularly refer to them, the directors, by insulting nicknames, and even had T-shirts made that displayed rude comments made by the directors. So Bob Hoskins referred to them as the the cunt and the cow. That was his name for them. And reportedly, at one point, Dennis Hopper was so fed up with the drawn out and constantly changing production that he spent almost 3 hours yelling at the directors, holding up the filming of a scene in Cooper's bedroom. So
nice.
he just, so I mean, there that must have been a really tense set to be on. So
Mm,
yeah, I can imagine the minute you're like, the movie's getting released, you're going to start doing press tours and things like. You're probably like, I don't want to, I don't want to do any
mm-mm.
of this stuff.
Well, sure, and I bet those people didn't want to do a sequel either. They probably were okay that it did bad because they're like, I don't want to work with these guys again.
Yeah. So, and according to Leguizamo, Rocky Morton once poured hot coffee on an extra's head because he didn't like the extra's costume. I mean, that's some of the behavior
That's
they're
ridiculous.
playing. And allegedly, due to drinking on set, John Leguizamo was hit by a car, breaking his leg. And you can even see the cast in some of the shots. If you look in the movie, there's like a sort of a cast that resembles his outfit.
And
So yeah.
that's
So
funny. So the,
yeah.
the the major the major takeaway for controversy for this, I would say, is the all the directors and the myriad of issues surrounding them as it
Yeah.
affected the production of the film.
Yeah, I mean, it just really, I mean, this was really terrible. So here, originally, even before Leguizamo was cast as Luigi, they wanted Tom Hanks. He was originally the
They
one
wanted
considered.
Tom Hanks in 1993 to play second fiddle to Bob Hoskins.
Well, this so he was considered for the role, but because Turner and Hooch and Joe versus the Volcano both failed, they decided to not go with him. They thought he was no longer a box office draw. Then
Mm,
93, Philadelphia hits, Oscar. 94,
hmm.
Forrest Gump, huge box office hit, Oscar.
That's fine. Those things wouldn't have happened if he had stopped and been considered and taken this
Right.
job.
Yeah, you're right. He probably wouldn't have been able to do those other films because he's like, I'm doing Mario Brothers over here.
Yeah.
But before Bob Hoskins was cast, they did want Danny DeVito and Bruno Kirby. They were both initially attached to the roles.
He also just would have been so much taller than Bob Hoskins. Like I get that Luigi's a little taller, but like it would have been noticeable.
Yep. So here's a something from Rocky Morton. So he reflected on the movie. This was in 2016. He talked about this as a harrowing experience. Explained that he and his wife, along with the rest of the cast, agreed to make the movie based on the script originally written by two writers, Dick Clement and Ian LaFrenice, which focused on Mario and Luigi's complicated but loving family dynamic that they had developed in the absence of their parents. However, just a few weeks before shooting was to begin, the studio financing the film demanded significant rewrites to make the film more childlike and comedic. The final result, according to Morton, was a script that was not at all like the script that he and Jenkel and the cast had signed on to do, and the tone of the new script was not at all compatible with the sets, which had already been built. Um, so I guess they're saying that, and they were saying Dennis Hopper
They're
was really
blaming the studio.
blaming the studio, and they said Dennis Hopper was really hard. I don't think had a clue what was going on, despite describing the overall experience as humiliating in the end. So, but Morton said he was proud of the film considering the chaos created as a result of the rewrites and all the
Did his
unexpected.
marriage survive that?
I don't know. That's a good question. That is a good
Mm.
question. Sorry, my lights will go. Uh, the, sorry, my lights will go out if I'm not moving.
Ah,
So, so let's see. Uh, yeah. So Hoskins, the reason he didn't want, he was another reason he didn't like the childlike script that he was saying is because he had done Roger Rabbit, he had done
Yeah.
Hook, and he didn't want to be the next Dick Van Dyke. He said, "I want to be in these kids' movies all the time."
You
So,
know, be typecast.
yeah. So he said, yeah.
But
So
but hear me out. You're
yeah,
doing this for a paycheck. You want to keep getting paychecks. Who cares if you're typecast?
yeah.
Either you're doing
Right.
this because of the craft or you're doing it for the money. And if you're doing it for the money, take the
Yep.
work.
Yeah. So Michael Keaton was approached to play Koopa at one point.
That probably
Um,
wouldn't have been bad.
Harold Ramis was offered to direct the film, but he declined.
Hmm.
Uh, and he's been happy with the decision after the film was
Ever since.
formed poorly. Um, let's see if there's any other interesting tidbits. Arnold Schwarzenegger was also approached for King Koopa. Um,
I don't know about that.
that would have been odd, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Leguizamo was annoyed that he was not allowed to ad lib on the film. Uh,
Again, what did I say, right? You
yep,
don't cast somebody like him and
yep,
then try to shackle him.
yep. Yeah, so yeah, that was definitely a big thing with that. But yeah, those are just
Because
some of the
he loves ad-libbing, and a lot of times they'll take what he does because they're like, oh wow, that was great. Fine, change it.
yeah. But yeah, right. And I think you need to in some cases just let him kind of riff because
Hmm.
you might find some gold in some of those at times. Because there's a
Hmm.
lot of times you watch a movie and you're like, that was ad lib, that was it was perfect. You know, it's just one of those
Yeah.
that just and I think that
He
can
just
help
likes
make
to
movies.
he just likes to talk like himself. He like plays himself in his roles. So then if he like does that and like skirts just around what was asked for, a lot of times they'll just be like close enough.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, when he's in a movie, I'm usually more interested because I
Sure.
what's
He
up.
was in
I was
I think the last thing that I saw him in that was new was The Menu.
okay, yeah, yeah,
Um, that
yeah,
one with Anya Taylor-Joy, he ends up being like one of the guests that like has something to hide or
yeah,
whatever. But he does the thing that he always does. He's like the fast talking like
yep,
Hispanic guy. He's like, hey,
yep,
come on, you know who I am? And they're
yeah.
like,
I
yeah,
mean,
well, you're the guy who did this thing. He's like, shit.
yeah. I
So,
always find that he elevates scenes. He does really wonderful things. Like
hmm.
John Wick, he's in there. He's great in there. You know, even if
Oh,
he's
I loved him in John Wick.
yeah. I mean, I love the roles he gets. He's always very different with what he takes, and
Hmm.
he's great in those roles. Same with Hoskins. Hoskins is another actor. I think he was underrated because he got kind of in that typecast,
Hmm.
thing
Hmm.
that he was playing. Because even in a movie like Heart Condition, which he did with
Hmm.
Denzel Washington, where he gets that heart from Denzel, who's a criminal or something like that. He's a cop,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
he's doing Roger Rabbit stuff, pantomiming a lot of that stuff, but he's
Yeah.
doing his Brooklyn accent as well. So
Hmm.
he kind of got in that. He's always like that kind of character they look for, but he was always great no
Hmm.
matter what he did.
Yeah.
And yeah, and actually, this is the third Hoskins movie we've hit. We did
Oh, really?
Christmas Carol. He was in that one as well, the Jim Carrey one. He
What are
was
you doing now?
Fizwig.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so
Low key,
there you
this is
go.
the Bob Hoskins movie show. We're
Right, I
just
know.
covering it up with other things.
We're throwing all his Hoskins movies in.
Hmm.
But yeah, so all right. I mean, but a lot happens in this. There's some really interesting little references. You got Yoshi. Yoshi made a little cameo in there, the little yellow dinosaur that's in Daisy's uh,
Hmm.
prison chamber, whatever. You have
Hmm.
like they reference Bullet Bills. That was that like nightclub or whatever it was. And
Yeah.
even when Mario puts the bullet in the gun, you see it has a little face on it, and he puts the shell into the gun. You're like,
Hmm.
okay, there's that little bomb that's walking
Yeah.
with the eyes, and you're like, okay, there's little
Hmm.
things they have in there that still reference what the movie was. But yeah, they reinvented the lore of Mario with this movie. They're like, let's do
I mean, even with the new one, like I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I feel like they're finding new ways to do that too. And instead of having to cameo like things from their own universe, they're starting to like
yeah,
connect to other Nintendo properties so they can, say,
yeah.
oh, well, this isn't a wider universe of characters.
Yeah, because they have what Star Fox, not to drop things, but I'd seen pictures of that. I thought that
Hmm.
was pretty cool. But that's
Yep.
that's great, and you can do that.
I'm,
I
I'm
think,
waiting. I'm waiting for like Sonic and Mario
yeah,
at the Olympic Games. Like it seems like it's inevitable.
yeah, oh, absolutely. But I mean,
Hmm.
think about it. If you can do that because they're respectful to the original property, we can add this stuff. We can change
Mhm.
things here and there because we aren't
Mhm.
slapping the fans in the face. And I'm not trying
Mhm.
to trash this movie in any way,
Mhm.
but I mean, I think that's what fans were seeing. This was a slap in the face. This was not the
Mhm.
Mario that I play on the video games every day and this and that. So it really, even the cartoon had all
Mhm.
the correct elements
Mhm.
that made Mario Mario. And this just went in completely different direction. Uh,
Mhm.
so it definitely can sour people. There was a toy line that came out for this. It consisted of like 6 action figures. It had
Mhm.
Mario and Luigi, obviously with their boots, those boots on. I thought the costumes they had were great too. That the overalls that they wore towards the end, that was a nice little
Yeah.
nod to their characters in the game.
Mhm.
So that's what the figures had. They had a King Koopa, they had the two henchmen, the Spike and the other guy, and they had a Goomba. So you could
Mm. Oh, no
they
Daisy.
no Daisy. Yeah, it only got one wave, and it was from Ertl. That was the toy, which was a model company mostly at the time. So it was a really strange tie-in with that.
Kenner wasn't interested. I got it.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, yeah, I know it's too bad, but to be honest with you, this kind of this being the first video game movie, it was very ambitious. It had a
Mhm.
lot of really there was heart there. There was
Mhm.
a lot of attempt to make something really unique in it, and that was
And
a
it
kind of a
and it
beloved property.
and it didn't work, but it
No,
doesn't mean that it didn't pave the way for the future because
and it
all it
did,
does is helps show the next guy what not to do.
and it didn't for a while. I mean, we had some pretty
Mhm.
bad video game adaptations for several years,
Mhm.
and I think the first time you really saw someone say, "Well, let me do what the fans say," was Sonic the Hedgehog, the first Sonic movie. Because
I was
remember,
thinking. I was thinking like Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat's the first. Oh, I love the
Hmm.
'95 Mortal Kombat. I love
That
that.
one
That was
and
great.
like Annihilation, like those
Yeah,
were good.
yeah. But the reason I'm saying Sonic is like you get up to that point because I mean even before
Hmm.
that you had Detective Pikachu and things like that. But the Sonic movie had remember the trailer that came out and they had that ugly Sonic.
Yeah,
That
and then
was
they
in the
changed it for the
And
fans. Yeah.
they said the fan reaction was so bad towards it. They're like, let's change that. And that was the
Mm.
smartest decision ever made by a filmmaker. They're not going to be like, no, this is my vision. I'm
I,
keeping it. They're like, no, the fans don't want this.
that might have to be a different controversial episode, but I would say that with that one,
Yeah.
I almost didn't believe it only because they didn't delay the movie or anything. So
Right.
I almost wonder if it was a troll, like they put out that trailer to
Maybe.
mess with us
Maybe. And
in an
that would, what a brilliant,
in an
brilliant
age
thing.
where, they show you an Avengers trailer with the Hulk in it and then the movie comes and he's not, it could happen.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. And that might have been. And if that's the case, that is brilliant.
Marketing, yeah.
I would, well, that was a first time director, right? I believe. I think that was his first film. And
Hmm.
if that was your idea, you're a genius. 100% because that's going to get people talking. That's going to get people wanting to see it. You win.
Yeah.
So,
So
so final thoughts. Let's give some final thoughts. What are your final thoughts on
I think
Super
that this
Mario
is one
Brothers?
of those like fun cult classic-y movies, which in hindsight are usually not the greatest. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? People love it for whatever reason. They attach a memory to it. They really like the Mario game, so they have a hard time besmirching this film. It's fine. It's not. It wasn't like the worst movie I've ever seen or anything, but obviously, with a lot of the controversies that you mentioned, there were probably ways to make it a better film that it didn't work out that way. Probably a
Yeah,
clear vision from the start that was followed through fully versus here's what we're signing on for, here's what the studio wants, and here's the mishmash that we get by the end.
right. And then
So,
that's the thing too, is I would definitely have to revisit this with the work print just to see
hmm
how this, but because I haven't, I alluded to, but it's
hmm
I'd be very curious if some of that original vision
hmm
is in that work print. And because
hmm
I feel the same way. Like it's a movie that you watch it. Yeah, if you go in there saying I'm watching a Mario movie that is going to be like the video game, you're going to be disappointed. But if you go
hmm
in saying, let me watch just this bizarre movie that's
hmm
using these characters in some way and see how it works, you might have a good time. You might enjoy a little bit of it. It's not perfect by any stretch, obviously, for
no,
many reasons, but
hmm
it has some charm. Hoskins
yep,
and Leguizamo are wonderful. I could
Hmm.
watch them together. I would love to see a sequel just to see them together again. Um,
Sure.
that would have been nice. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think overall the movie itself has there's an appeal there. Like
Hmm.
that cult classicness to it. If you go into it and you're like, let me just have a good time and see something that's
Hmm.
just off the rails, weird and unusual. Here's your movie.
Hmm.
It'll deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting film, but I thought it'd be great to hit this. So, with the
Hmm.
Mario movies, now that we've got really successful,
Hmm.
well-received Mario movies out there now,
Yeah,
let's
it's
take a
it's
look back.
ironic given that the first one in this new set of them is now listed as the highest grossing video game adaptation of all time. It may
Yeah.
actually hold the record for both. It
Yeah.
may hold the record for highest grossing, and then this one is maybe the lowest grossing.
Right. Probably
So
is. Yeah, this
Mario,
one.
Guinness has got it for both sides.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, at
So
least, at least in some respects, someone
mhm.
tried. They
Sure,
put
yeah.
something out there, and
Hmm.
this, as much as they might have hated it at the time, there was a labor of love for these directors that were trying to make something work.
Hmm.
Despite whatever, if it was studio issue, if it was their issue, whatever it was, there was some sort
Hmm.
of,
Yeah.
give and take that they tried to make whatever they could make work out of that.
Yeah.
And take it for what it is and give it a shot. But I would recommend people, just for curiosity's sake, take a look at
Sure.
it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll very rarely do I not recommend something like it. It's got to I
Yeah, me too.
rarely do I see something I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad, don't watch it because I want people to get their own opinion. But yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yep.
so
Yeah, and same thing. Like I love people to
mhm.
see it just to hear what they think.
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting people to walk out there going, "Oh my God, it changed my life," but
Hmm.
look at it more subjectively
Yeah.
than objectively. Don't look at it as a Mario movie. Look at it as a movie and say,
Yeah.
what is about this works and what doesn't? Can
Yeah.
I find something in there that works?
Yep.
But yeah,
But,
interesting one. But there you go.
all
Mario
right.
Brothers. The oddity that is Mario Brothers. So yeah, but we'll end that there. We'll say that was our take on that. We'll be back for whatever our next movie is. I don't know if we've picked one yet, so we'll just start
Mhm.
hemming and hawing around and see what the next one will be. And if anybody's interested and wants us to hit some movie, throw it in the comments. We'll definitely take that into
Mhm.
consideration.
All righty, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.